Patrick, can you start? Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, first off, quick introductions. Hi, everyone. Sue Ellen Atkinson, Manager of Planning and Fund Management at the TA, and I am leading our call for projects for Cycle 3 of our TDM program. I would like to quickly introduce a new team member, and then I'll have Patrick just do an introduction. Not that everyone doesn't know Patrick already. So we are very excited that we had a new team member join us last week, and I just wanted to take a quick moment to introduce her to our city partners. So we have Marissa Matthias. I think I got it that time. Thank you. And I'll just give her a quick second to introduce herself, but she is our new senior transportation planner on our team. Marissa?
Hi, yeah, I'm on week 2, so very excited to be here. I most recently came from the Federal Railroad Administration, and then before that was with Kinley Horn, doing a lot of consulting in this area, so I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Marissa. Patrick?
Hey everyone, great to see you. Patrick Gilster, Director of Planning and Fund Management here at the Transportation Authority. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thanks everyone for taking the time to join us for this workshop. Patrick, I think you might have to upgrade me the panelist so I can share.
You should be good now.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So we've got quite a lot to go through today. Um, let's see. There we go. All right. Can everyone see presentation in slideshow mode? All right, great. Okay, everyone, thanks for joining us for our 2025 TDM Cycle 3 Call for Projects workshop. This is a little bit of an off cycle for us. We just did Cycle 2 last year in 2024. We were undersubscribed on our program, so we were able to come out this year with another Call for Projects to release some additional funds for TDM projects. So today we will be going over the general Call for Projects process. And then go more into specifics on the TDM call for projects overview and types of projects that we will be looking for here, and some general application tips, which for many of you is not new information. You're old hands at doing grant applications. We'll run through the call for project schedule, and then I'll walk you through our website and the application and some additional documents that we have available for you. So generally the call for projects process for this go around, we released the call for projects last Thursday, June 5th. And then today we're having our call for projects workshop. If you want to reference back to this material at all, we will be posting the video of the workshop to our website, or if you have any colleagues that missed today's presentation, we'll make that available to you. So moving forward, July 1st is the first deadline to be aware of. That's the deadline to submit the notice of intent to submit survey. If you would like to request an optional pre-submittal meeting, those meetings are with TA staff to go over your thoughts for what you plan to apply for. They are optional unless you are applying for TA technical assistance or a reduced match request, in which case they are mandatory. So you'll want to go ahead and submit the survey that we'll walk through later this workshop by July 1st if you'd like to request that meeting. For all others who are not requesting a meeting, we do ask that you submit that survey by July 31st so that we can set up a Dropbox folder for you to upload your application. And those applications are due August 1st. So if you can get that survey in a little before July 31st, that would be most appreciated. So we have a little bit of wiggle room on getting those folders set up. But again, July 31st is that final deadline to submit the survey in order to get your folder set up. August 1st, again, project applications are due. We are taking electronic applications only, so you'll use the Dropbox link that is provided to you. And then we'll take all the information that you submit, and our evaluation committee will review those applications during August and September. That needs to be updated a little. We will be presenting draft program recommendations to the TA board in October of 2025. That says November, apologies, with the expectation that the final program will be adopted in November of 2025. So generally, the TDM grant program has 5 goals. First is to promote projects that provide reduced congestion on our roadways. Second is to increase the availability of sustainable transportation options, to promote sustainability and health generally in our community, to encourage economic development opportunities, and to invest funding equitably. And we do that through providing funding across 3 different funding categories. So in the call for projects, you'll see opportunity to identify your proposed project or program in one of these 3 categories. So first is Intelligent Transportation Systems, or ITS, and that's funding for planning and design of intelligent transportation systems for improved transit or highway capacity. We'll go through each of these a little bit more in detail with some examples. The second category is TDM planning funds, and that's funding for developing TDM plans and policies at your local jurisdiction level. And then finally, TDM competitive funds, that's our largest bucket. Those are set aside to be distributed for general TDM programs and projects. And we do divide those into small coastal and mid-large categories, again, to provide more equitable distribution of those funds. So going into a little bit more detail on each of these. First, ITS, probably familiar to most of you. Example projects under our ITS category would be for mobility hubs and smart corridor plans to purchase data. We've had previous successful grant applications for purchasing sidewalk data or other similar data sources for use in developing projects. Real-time information plans, dynamic parking sign plans, or AV and shared AV plans, pilot programs, etc. TDM planning funds are those local TDM plans and policies. So for example, just general TDM plans for cities, TDM policy development for cities, TMA feasibility studies, if your jurisdiction is interested in doing that, bike parking plans, wayfinding plans, etc. So really development of planning documents that are focused on TDM or congestion relief or sustainable transportation options. And then third is that large competitive funds bucket. So these are the projects and the programs that you see coming out of the TDM grant program. So eligible projects and programs for this: e-bike purchases or subsidies, bike parking, safe routes to school, or general bike and pedestrian spot treatments. So what we're looking at in spot treatments is more of a crosswalk installation, a flashing beacon installation, a curb extension. These would not be the intersection improvements or corridor projects. Those are more likely to be funded through our PED bike program funding that would be coming out again next year. So these are really the very specific spot treatments that tend to be smaller projects and not competitive under our other programs. This category would also include transit passes and wayfinding. So this year we had expected to have about $5 million available, but we were actually able to make $7.97 million available for cycle 3. So we're hoping to be able to award almost $8 million this cycle. So think big. So in our ITS planning and design category, we have just under $1.5 million available. For the competitive projects category, again, that's our biggest bucket, we have just over $6 million available. For both ITS and competitive projects, we've increased our maximum request per project to $500,000 for those 2 categories this time after adoption of our new strategic plan in December. So we're hoping that that gives all of you the opportunity to submit and recommend a bit larger projects and be able to do a little bit more in your communities by increasing that maximum request amount. And then for TDM planning, we have just over $350,000 available. For plans, the maximum request is $200,000. And then in terms of total applications, each entity is able to submit up to 3 applications across these 3 categories. So you can mix and match or submit applications, all 3 in one, for example. Application materials. All of our materials are currently posted on our Call for Projects webpage, smcta.com/2025 TDM CFP. So that we will walk through after this presentation, and you'll find our fillable application that will look very familiar to most of you. Our program guidelines that go through a lot of what we're talking about today. The link to the notice of intent to submit survey. So that's a Qualtrics survey that will open in another tab that you'll need to fill out. We also provide an evaluation scoring rubric, and that really gives you information about how to calibrate your responses to earn the maximum number of points, really. And it gives you opportunity when you're writing your application to see how many points your application may score in the evaluation committee. And then we also include a sample governing board resolution. That resolution is required to be adopted by your local governing board, your city council board, et cetera, and included in your application submission by August 1st. In terms of what you will be submitting by August 1st at 4 p.m., you will be submitting that fillable application, the cover letter with a statement of non-supplementation of funds, so basically that the grant funds are not being used to supplant any local funding or any other funding that's already been identified for a project. You'll need to include that executed governing board resolution, any letters of support, cost estimates, and then photos or other documentation if applicable. And all of that will be uploaded to the Dropbox folder that you will be sent. So now we'll go a little bit more into the application and all of the information that you'll be providing in there. So in terms of what we're looking at when we're evaluating the application in whole, is really 5 criteria: need, effectiveness, equity, readiness, and funding leverage. And you'll see that each of these is weighted slightly differently, with the need, or how well the project addresses the goals of our TDM program as outlined by our adopted ACR TDM plan. That's 40% of the score is really related to how well the project will meet those goals of our TDM program, such as equity, reduced congestion, sustainable transportation, et cetera. Next highest weighting is equal for both effectiveness and equity. So addressing how the project will show success and how you plan to track it. So not just implementing the program or doing the plan, but how you actually plan to track after the fact. And then addressing how well the project will contribute to advancing equitable outcomes. We do look at readiness of the project or the program. How ready are you to actually begin implementation or begin that study when funding is awarded? And finally, funding leverage. If necessary funding has been allocated or identified, does this grant fully fund the project or the program that you're looking to do? Or is there still a funding gap that you haven't yet identified funding for? In the application, very similar to prior years, there's both qualitative and quantitative metrics that we're looking at. So there are quite a number of narratives. You'll be able to write quite a lot of information in the application. But then there's also some qualitative metrics that will be calculated on the back end by TA staff. And so we'll go through each of those in a little bit more detail. And then when we go through the application, you'll see how that's done. So in terms of that first criteria of need, which is again the lion's share of points, there are several questions related to this criteria, and again broken out by narrative and then some quantitative metrics that are calculated for you. So the first is how well the project addresses congestion relief. So in that narrative question, you'll want to explain how your plan or project provides congestion relief or reduces VMT. At the same time, we'll be calculating the VMT density of all the census blocks that the project boundary will impact, and we'll base that on the CCAG VMT tool. So both of those are very related, but there's some portion that you'll be filling out and then a portion that will be done by TA staff. Next, increase sustainable transportation options. So you'll be able to give some detail on how your proposed project or plan will create incentives for transit, bike, ped, carpooling, or other sustainable transportation options to encourage the use of those options over driving alone. And then again, there's quantitative metrics to support that as well. Next is that promotion of sustainability and health. So for the narrative, we'll want to look at how your project or plan will enhance public health and safety. And then we'll be using Cal EnviroScreen data to do the quantitative metrics for the project as well. Next, encourage economic development opportunities. That's opportunity to give detail on how your plan or project will improve access to employment, to job centers, to business districts, to retail, et cetera. How does it give opportunity for people to use sustainable transportation options to reach those areas? And then we'll also be looking at the proportion of to which your project or plan will overlap with an MTC priority development area to give a little bit more context to that. And then invest funding equitably. You'll explain how your plan or project addresses the needs of historically underserved populations. And we will be looking at the Samtrans equity priority areas as a counterpart to that narrative question. Next step for effectiveness, you'll be showing how you plan to define success in terms of your plan or project and how you plan to track those criteria of success, really. How you'll monitor the program or project over time, the metrics for defining success and measuring success, and how it could be sustained beyond the 2-year funding cycle that the TDM grant program provides. What we'll want you to be doing is identifying the proposed monitoring strategy and giving some information about how you plan to track it. Moving on to equity, you'll be asked to provide information in various ways and how the strategy increases transportation affordability and makes it easier or hopefully not harder for lower income households to access transportation. If your project or plan is benefiting those who are historically disadvantaged in terms of access to transportation, or if it provides an opportunity for enhancing basic access to transportation. There are 3 different types of evaluation for equity. There's location-based, user-based, and mode-based. So either the plan or project is specific to a location that's in a MTC equity priority community or a Samtrans equity priority area, that would be location-based. User-based is looking at the narrative description of how the plan or project provides benefits for lower income individuals, people with disabilities, seniors, et cetera. And then mode-based is looking at how well the project or plan creates incentives for those various modes of transportation to encourage the use of those over driving alone. Some general guidelines. Again, we have the full guidelines linked on our application website. Matching funds, there is a required minimum match of 10% for all of our program categories. There is an option for an equity-based match of 5% for projects or programs that are primarily in equity priority communities or Samtrans priority zones. And again, if you are looking to request that reduced match of 5% as an equity-based match, you are required to do a pre-submittal meeting with TA staff. So you'll want to get that notice of intent to submit application in, or survey, sorry, in by July 1st. For general guidelines, again, we've increased all of our maximum program requests. So for planning, our maximum funding amount is $200,000. And then for ITS and competitive programs, our maximum is now $500,000. So we're hoping that that allows for some more robust plans and projects to be submitted. Jurisdictions are limited to sponsoring and submitting up to 3 applications per each CFP cycle. So you can do that across the 3 categories, or you can submit 3 applications all in one category if you'd like. And then we do have a timely use of funds requirement. So all of the projects or programs must complete a supplemental funding agreement with the TA. You've all already executed primary grant agreements with the TA, so this is a supplemental agreement just for this funding opportunity. You're required to begin work within 1 year of the grant award and expend the funds within 2 years of the funding agreement date. In terms of some general application tips, which again, all of you are super familiar with, read the application guidelines and instructions before you start, please. Make sure that you've gathered the correct attachments. Make sure that your local governing board resolution is in the queue to be approved prior to August 1st. Make sure that you're selecting the correct project type on your application, and make sure that you're filling out all of the parts of the application. We do potentially need to reject incomplete applications, so we want to make sure that you are as competitive as possible. Second, assume the scoring panel does not know your project. Share all of the details that you can. In just a second, we'll talk about the Word document. You are limited to the amount of space that's shown in each box, but make sure to use that space to tell us everything that you can about why we should be funding your project. We know a lot of your jurisdictions, but we don't know each project that you're thinking about. So pretend that we know nothing and sell us on your project, really, I guess. At the same time, be concise when you're writing your narratives because you do have a limited amount of space. And then please submit your application on time. So that application deadline is August 1st at 4 p.m. We are not able to accept late applications. And as a corollary to that, please double check that you are able to access your Dropbox through the link that is provided before 4 p.m. on August 1st. We have a Word application document that's linked on our website. Sometimes it can be a little finicky, so just a few things to remember. Limit your responses to the space that's available in the text box. If you can't see the text in the text box, we can't see it either, so we won't be able to evaluate it. If you are looking to format your responses in the text boxes and want to create a new paragraph, you'll need to do Shift-Enter. You're not able to just hit Enter on that. And then if you are developing your responses in a different form, you'll need to use Control V and right-clicking, Control plus V, in order to copy and paste into that text box. Right-clicking in the text boxes does not work. All right, brief overview again of the schedule, or reminder, I suppose, at this point. Call for projects is live, it's released. Everything is up on our website already. We are currently doing our workshop. Thank you for attending. And we will post this recording to the website as soon as we are able. Notice to submit survey deadlines. We have 2 of those. Again, the first to request an optional pre-submittal meeting is by July 1st. That is mandatory if you are looking for TA technical assistance, or if you are requesting or planning to request the reduced match. So again, July 1st is that first cutoff for the surveys. If you are just looking to apply and only need that link for a Dropbox folder, then your deadline for the notice of intent to submit survey is July 31st. Again, if you're able to do it earlier, we would very much appreciate that. Project applications are due August 1st by 4 p.m. And then our evaluation committee will take over and be evaluating those applications in the August and September timeframe. And then we'll bring draft recommendations to our board in October with plans to award the final program in November. That brings us to the end of the presentation. So again, here's the link to our CFP website. And then I can also provide that in the chat. And I will pause here to take some questions before walking you through the application and the guidelines.
And if you haven't done so already, please drop your name, title, and agency in the chat.
And
Good
let
morning,
me just...
Rhonda. I was just curious, what is the set aside for small and coastal cities?
I am so sorry. I was just copy pasting the link into here. Um, I actually don't have that offhand. I can get back to you on that unless Patrick knows it offhand right now.
I believe it's 30% goal for small coastal and 70% for mid-large.
Sagal?
Hey, so Ellen, thank you for
Hi.
that presentation. We're excited about this new round of funding. Some questions. First, I didn't get notice of this meeting or the opening of the grant, so I just wanted to make sure that we were on the right email list for any future communication that we don't miss things.
Okay.
If you could just make a note. And also, so when you went through that table, sorry, that background noise. And when you went through that table, anything that had like the proxy metrics, that's going to be quantified on your end, right? We don't do that
Right.
quantification. Okay.
Right. You'll just write out the narrative responses.
Okay.
Anything
Great.
data related, the TA takes care of on the back end.
Okay. And then so a meeting is only required with ESSA with the TA if we need technical assistance or reduced, or do you recommend we have a meeting anyway just to talk through our project?
We are always happy to talk to you.
Okay.
If you'd like to set up a meeting, we would welcome that. It's only required in those two cases, but we are
Okay.
always happy to chat. If you feel confident in your project, then you can just go ahead with the application.
And I mean, just as like not to have any spoilers, but we basically are looking to continue a program that we've received TA funding for before. Is that okay for the TA to refund a project in a way or keep it going? Is that
It
acceptable?
would be, but we would also be looking at if there are other options for you to continue funding past the 2-year cycle. So
Got it.
that is one of the narrative questions. Um, so just something to think about as well.
Okay, so it's just like the long-term plan for
Yeah.
the program. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think that is it for now. Thank you.
No problem. Helen?
Hi, thank you. That was
Hi.
boy, get that done. Which I appreciate. So questions, I should know this, but I just when you say survey, um, this is actually it would be my first time applying. So when you say survey, is it a like broad landscape survey of the project, or are you talking a survey out some sort of, fill in like to get feedback on the project proposal? Could I get clarification on that?
Sure. It is just survey is a very it's not really a survey. It's just a request for a pre-submittal meeting. I will show the website for it after we go through the application, but it's just asking for your project name, how much you think you're going to be requesting, some other additional information. And that's to either request the pre-submittal meeting or just let us know that you intend to submit so we can set up the Dropbox folder for you.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then when you if the reso is late, is that part of would that discount the entire, like trying to get things onto the calendar for the council might take some time, and that's what I'm worried about. So the reso is a few weeks late, is that a problem?
If you can show us that it is scheduled to go to your governing board, we should be able to accept that.
Okay, great. And in terms of the scoring rubric, is the rubric look at cities that have taken too long with funding, and are they lower than on the scoring?
That could nominally be taken into account, but it's not an official rubric scoring item.
Okay, great. Okay.
I would say not to be concerned there.
Okay, and then what about in terms of the pot of money, if you're not sure, like technically, should we come to you if we need technical assistance on cost estimates without having done an RFP yet, for instance?
I think that would be a good thing to set up a pre-submittal meeting to chat through. Yeah,
Okay, sounds
Yeah.
great. Okay, thanks for the great overview. Thank
thank
you.
you. Any other questions?
Hey, Sue Ellen, I just had a
Yeah,
question
Emma.
in the chat, but just will you also post this PowerPoint along with the recording?
We will do that, yes.
Okay, thanks.
That way you don't have to sit and listen to me again. All right, not seeing any other questions right now. I'm going to go ahead and share screen and walk you through the CFP website and then the documents that are available on the website, including that notice of intent to submit survey. So 1 second. All right. So again, our link for the CFP website is smcta.com/2025 TDM CFP. I've also dropped that in the chat here. Or if you need additional links or something, please feel free to reach out. I'll drop my email address as well. So we've got the brief overview, all of our key dates that we went through here. So again, those first key dates that you want to keep in mind is July 1st if you want to request, if you want to or need to request a pre-submittal meeting, and then July 31st for all others. And then that really important date of August 1st by 4 p.m. Is the deadline for all of our applications. We have the breakdown of available funding. Again, those maximum requests have increased this CFP cycle, $500,000 max for ITS and competitive, and then $200,000 max for planning. And then all of our application submittal instructions. So that first step is that notice of intent to submit survey. So the link is available on that website. And again, it looks a little more formal and survey-ish than it really needs to. But you're just going to give information about what agency you're with, the primary contact name for the grant application, all of your pertinent details, and then some very, very high level project information just to give us some background on what you're looking to be requesting in this funding cycle. And then information about the match that you are requesting, if it's that minimum of 10%. If your answer here is the 5% equity based, you have to be requesting that pre-submittal meeting. Asking if you're interested in TA technical assistance. If the answer is yes, you do have to be having that pre-submittal meeting, or no. And then option 2, request the pre-submittal meeting that I've talked about 400 times probably. And then you'll just submit it and we'll contact you to set up those meetings if needed, or the Dropbox folders for all other. So hopefully that gives some information on what that survey is about, but it's really just to give us the information for the meetings or for the Dropbox links. Step 2 is we'll have those meetings with whoever would like to. And then everyone is on step 3, which is uploading your application by August 1st at 4 p.m. And then we've also got links to all of our TDM application materials. So the first is the guidelines, which are all of the background information about the program, everything that we've gone through today. The second is the application, which is a Word document. We also have another Word document for a governing board resolution template. It should have most of what your governing board requires in it already. If you have any questions about changes, please feel free to reach out. And then finally, we have the scoring rubric that gives you a really nice roadmap of what you want to be looking to include in your responses. So I will go through each of these now. So for the guidelines, again, that's our full program information document. Again, with the schedule, we really want to make sure you know those important dates. All of the information about the survey, the Dropbox link, and then submitting your application. And then a lot of background about the TDM grant program, how it came into existence, the goals of the program that you want to be aligning your application responses with, and then overall criteria for the program as well. So the available funding, and then the information that we went through regarding matching funds, timely use of funds, etc. Eligibility, all of the eligible applicants. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out as well. And then all of the required application attachments. So please read through that before you start the application, just to make sure that you have everything on hand. And not a bad idea to go through it again just before submitting to check things off. Just some other policies and guidelines and information generally hasn't changed. Again, the major change for funding agreements is that most of you have executed that primary grant agreement with the TA. So for this funding opportunity, you would only be executing a supplemental agreement. Information about progress reporting for this grant program, which I believe most of you are quite familiar with. And then we have attachment A, which is similar to what was released last year with all of our, the 3 different areas, ITS, planning, and then competitive bucket, and some information just to give you some ideas in terms of projects that are eligible. So going back to the website, the next item is that program application. And that again is a Word document that we'll bring over here. So we've got all of the information that's required. So again, just maybe use that as a checklist. And then we do have this created as a fillable form. So again, you are limited to the space within these text boxes. So be thorough, but concise, or as much as possible. And then one change this year is because we have had some additional projects that are construction based, we did change the project schedule section a little bit. If you are doing a plan or a policy, you'll just be filling in this pre-project planning section. So start and end for plan. If you're doing design or construction, you'll fill this in a little more thoroughly. And then we've got information on funding leverage, all of the funding that you have available. Sorry about that. Any unfunded amount, and that gives us just information about your readiness to begin the program and the funding that you have available. And then looking for detail on the sources of your matching funds as well. And then if you have any shortfalls or any gaps in your funding, just giving us some information about how you plan to address that or other concerns that you have in terms of funding. And then we get into the section that you've probably seen before, which is all of our narrative responses. Again, need assessment is going to be a large portion of the application scoring. So we do provide a lot of opportunity for you to tell us a lot about your project. So in each, you'll see that narrative section and then the quantitative section that the TA will fill in after you submit your application. So you'll see that sustainability question, economic development question, and then we'll get into the effectiveness and the evaluation of success and the tracking of metrics that you're proposing. And then equity, the various quantitative options, and then narrative responses as well. And here is a question that's pretty important in terms of community support. If your project has been identified in an adopted plan that's done community engagement, definitely include that information in this section so that we know that you've been out in the community and you've gotten interest, you've gotten feedback, and you've changed or modified your program approach to include that feedback. And then everyone's favorite section, bonus points. So we are giving some bonus points, a total of possible of 8 for this application cycle. So the first is if you are creating a TDM plan or policy, tell us about that, and you are eligible for 5 bonus points if you are proposing a TDM plan. If you already have a plan in place, we will award bonus points to that project because the jurisdiction already has a TDM plan. And then for those of you who attended the commute.org TDM workshop earlier this year, so that was back in February, we are awarding 3 bonus points as mentioned, for those who attended or had a representative attend the workshop. So just click yes or no. We will double check with commute.org and then award those 3 bonus points for attendance. Next up is the resolution template. That's pretty standard. So this, again, if you have any questions about modifications that you're looking to make to this, minor modifications are fine, but if you have questions, feel free to reach out. And these resolutions do need to be submitted with the application, or if you have a date on the calendar, please reach out prior to application submittal and let us know that. And then we will require that the resolution be submitted shortly after that calendar date. If you do not submit the resolution just after that calendar date, we may need to reject the application. And then finally, the rubric. Oh, sorry. There we go. So really highly suggest taking a skim through the rubric before you're composing your narrative responses and then maybe after, because this is what the evaluation committee will be looking at when we're scoring the applications. So there are no surprises in this process. And what we want to be able to do is assign as many points to your application as possible. So really look at this rubric and see how the evaluation committee will be scoring responses, and make sure that you're gearing your narratives toward that information as much as possible. There's a lot of information in here, but it gives you all of the information that we'll be using in terms of assigning partial credit to an answer or full credit to an answer. So hopefully that is something that is helpful to all of you. And then finally, contact information. Most of you know how to get a hold of me anyway, but all of my contact information is on the CFP website as well. So with that, I will stop sharing. Any questions on the CFP website, any of the documents that were shared, or just general questions? Okay. Oh, Emma.
Hi, yeah. Could you elaborate on what would be covered under the 25% administrative portion of each grant?
That is a set aside, or not set aside, but is a maximum amount that can be used for staff costs. So if you're looking at a project that you're requesting $100,000, then the maximum that you could be proposing to use can't exceed 25% of that, or 25,000.
Yeah, so like I know it can be used for staff, but like what specifically? Like just any staff time? Are there components of staff time that would be covered or not covered?
I don't know that there are components that would not be covered necessarily. Patrick, do you have any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I think the way you can think about it is if you're actually implementing a program or like leading a course or something like that as staff, that is eligible for the 75%. But if it's just the administrative aspect of managing the grant itself or dealing with marketing, things like that, that is part of the 25% cost. But you'll need to show in there what staff is doing in each of those components.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Helen?
Sorry about the background noise. Quickly, for the 3 bonus points for the TDM plan, a couple of us were at the Board of Supervisors that concurrently that same day trying to get a TDM plan approved and put in attendance. So maybe if you're trying to get your TDM plan approved, would that count?
There are two separate opportunities for the bonus points. So there is the TDM plan, which we know you have in place. For the workshop, let's connect offline just to get some more information.
Thanks.
Shonda?
And I think this is just connecting to Emma's question. We had corresponded a while ago via email about this, but just to clarify, so like if we were, say, applying for development of marketing and education materials, I think you had shared that if we were working with community-based organizations to sort of promote those or promote program participation, that would be part of the 25%, right? Not the 75%.
Yes.
Correct. And again, that's just when we're talking about them acting as promotional or marketing, not if they're actually leading other parts of educational opportunities or things like that as it relates to TDM.
I had another question about the ITS sort of program or portion. So if we were our TDM plan calls for a parking study because we in the coastal zone it's very challenging to manage parking due to the Coastal Act, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to do sort of like a bunch of data collection and justification to develop a policy to actually manage the parking on the coast. And in order to be able to implement things like policy or wayfinding or real-time information, because there's just lots of things connected to the Coastal Act. Would that data collection study fall under an ITS or would that fall under planning?
That parking study or parking management plan would fall under the planning category.
Okay.
If that plan identifies dynamic parking or real-time parking availability signage or implementation, then those types of equipment would be eligible in a future round under ITS. But if you're doing a planning effort or a study.
Okay. If part of the planning effort included data purchasing, would you recommend separating out those two requests? Like, yeah, I guess I was just curious how to make, and maybe that's an offline question. We can also talk about that later.
Yeah, we can sort through that. Data purchasing would be eligible under the ITS bucket, but then a planning effort would be more aligned with the planning subcategory. And then that, real-time parking occupancy equipment then would go back to ITS if you implement that later. All right, last chance. Everyone's ready for lunch, I think. All right. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today. Again, all of this information, the PowerPoint will be posted on our website. The recording will be posted on our website as well. And feel free to reach out to me with any questions that you might have. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.